CISPA, or the Cyber Information Sharing and Protection Act, is the hot topic of the day. With a vote to possibly come tomorrow, debate on the House floor began today with a number of amendments being taken up. Now, this also comes on the heels of the White House issuing a veto threat yesterday to this bill, if it remained as originally written. Now, for a refresher, CISPA would allow private companies to hand over your personal communications and data to the government if they see it as a cyber threat to their network. And as originally written, what the government could do with that data, which agencies could get their hands on it, including the NSA, well, there were no limits to that. But we do seem to be getting somewhere as advocacy groups have been pushing hard against the privacy demolishing bill. At least there are amendments of our debate, right? But the only thing is, are any of these amendments actually good enough, or is it still a major threat to your civil liberties? Well, joining me to discuss it is Trevor Tim, activist at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Trevor, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And for starters, can you tell us a little bit more about this hearing today, if you were monitoring it at all, what the members of Congress were saying? Because I have a distinct memory of everyone being in a collective state of shock when SOPA went up for debate as to how uninformed so many of these lawmakers were.
Right, so they brought the bill to the House floor today, which means the whole House gets to debate it. And they've been talking about a couple dozen amendments all day. And actually, we just found out a couple minutes ago that even though the vote was actually scheduled for tomorrow, that the bill's author, Mike Rogers, has moved it up to tonight. So it's possible they actually might vote on the full bill within a couple minutes, actually. And these amendments are troublesome in some respects, because the Rogers amendments, which got a full vote and most of them will probably go through, are kind of just cosmetic changes to the bill. He's been going around claiming that he's working with the privacy community, and these amendments, placate what we are wanting. But actually, in fact, these amendments do nothing about the main problems in the bill that we've been complaining about. And he's using them as kind of a smokescreen to allow other congressmen to believe it's okay to vote on it.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, you and I have spoken about this before, but since they might vote on it tonight, that means that people are actually in agreement, that they think that they could actually get this passed?
Well, personally, I think he's actually moving the vote up because the winds have changed, and it's actually going in the other direction. Just a couple hours ago, we heard that a CISPA co-sponsor is going to vote no. Some of the amendments that were substantive and that would have taken the power out of the NSA's hands to get this information, or required a warrant for personal information, or forced companies to anonymize this information, all of those weren't allowed to go to a vote in the House floor because Rogers didn't want them. And he gave no substantial reasons for this, and he says that his amendments cover privacy issues when they in fact don't. So as we've seen throughout the day, there have actually been a lot of House members who have drawn attention to these dangerous privacy concerns and how this bill will destroy civil liberties. But I think he sees that he needs to get this vote in as soon as possible, because if he waits another day, it might be too late.
Well, already yesterday we had the White House issue a statement, issue a veto threat to this. I mean, what do you think about that, right, in terms of how much pressure that might put on members of Congress that are about to, or members of the House that are about to vote on it, but also, why do you think that they did that, right? Because we can't say that this administration is particularly privacy friendly or civil liberties friendly in any way. So, why did they choose to actually step up and take this position?
Well, they've been pushing different cybersecurity legislation for a few months now, and this bill is much broader and much more privacy invasive than their bill is. They actually agree with us basically on this bill. They said yesterday that this isn't a cybersecurity bill, it's turning into an intelligence bill, where the NSA and other intelligence agencies in the military will get to read Americans' communications if they're handed over from the companies. So in that respect, we agree with the Obama administration. We're happy to see their veto threat. And I think this is just kind of one sign of many that Mike Rogers is seeing that the tide is turning against him. There was a bunch of free market Republican groups that came out the other day saying they were against CISPA. Ron Paul's against CISPA. So it's kind of all sides, or all sides of the spectrum that have started to realize the privacy dangers, and hopefully, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in this vote in a few minutes, but hopefully the tide turned enough where that everyone will vote no.
Well, let me ask you about something, too. So clearly, you were part of this campaign of trying to get people to be aware about this bill, right? Trying to get more people on board in terms of opposition to this bill. And so the Center for Democracy and Technology is one of these advocacy groups that was opposed to the legislation. Then, when some of the amendments were brought up, they decided that, hey, actually now we're going to support it and we would be okay with it going through. Turns out that they made a deal with the Homeland, with the actual committee. Then when the White House released their veto threat, the Center for Democracy and Technology decided, never mind, we're against it again. How often does that happen? And, does that hurt the effort when you have an advocacy group playing games like that, making promises to committee members that they won't criticize something?
Well, this was an interesting situation because I think what actually happened was, EFF and a host of other groups have been against this bill from the start. And even with the substantive amendments that we wanted, we still would have opposed it because it still would have encroached on civil liberties. But the Center for Democracy and Technology had been working with Mike Rogers to actually get these substantive amendments up for a vote. And they had made a statement, not saying that they would support the bill, but if these amendments came up for a vote, that they would not oppose it. And Mike Rogers then came out with a statement saying, oh, Center for Democracy and Technology is on board. And then all of a sudden, Rogers pulled the rug out from under him and said, actually, the amendments that you asked for, we're not going to vote on. And so he used it as kind of a marketing ploy where he could tell other people that civil liberties groups are happy with this bill when in fact the opposite is true.
So they got played.
A little bit.
Last thing that I want to ask you, too, is that Kashmir Hill wrote in Forbes today that some of this is actually based on a model, something that the FBI has been using for years. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. So there is, the FBI has kind of found a way to do this without a bill, allowing companies to share information with them that they normally otherwise wouldn't share. And then we can see this from the other way too. This bill allows government to share information with companies and companies to share with the government. The government has already been sharing cyber threat information with hundreds of companies and actually wants to expand that program now for almost a year. And this is exactly what this bill is made to do. So we have to wonder, why is this bill even needed if they think they already have this ability? And that's where question.
Trevor, I'm sorry, I got to wrap you up because we're running out of time, but definitely we will be catching back up with you, and we'll see if this vote might happen during our show tonight, too. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, thanks a lot.